everybody, and welcome back to For the Booze.
For the Booze.
For the Booze.
Back for another week of history and mystery behind it all.
That we are.
You know how we do. Here for another, this is the week after our first two-part, and I enjoyed doing that, but it is time to move on, and we have to leave the beach. We have to leave Florida behind.
Well, all the trees and stuff, too.
You know what I mean. Come on. People hear we're from Florida, and they think beach.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Beach.
Disney.
They're gonna start to think we hate Florida, which we do. But that's besides the fact. So, we just got back from doing our two-parter in Key West, and it was a spooky one. I hope everybody out there that's listening remembered. Say you're sorry.
Yes.
Say you're sorry.
Apologize.
Ask permission. Strings of bad luck may have been had after doing that episode, but it was worth it to bring the story to the Booze Crew.
It was.
We appreciate all y'all for listening. Great turnout for it. New listeners, hey, how you doing? We are so happy to have you here.
We are. Thank you, everybody who has been listening from the beginning, all the new listeners, and everybody in between. We appreciate y'all so very much.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
But anyways, we are going to kind of do a tip of the hat this episode to our good friend Rick at Maximum Oddities. This is he finally came back after being on a seasonal break, a hiatus, I don't know what to call it, but Maximum Oddities is back.
Hey.
I actually really enjoy this show, and I hope our listeners will go listen as well. Rick was one of the first friends I made coming into podcasting, actually before I did this podcast, when I did my other podcast. So this week, we're not going to get into the to what exactly we're doing yet, but we're going to hear promo or a trailer, whatever you want to call it. And Rick is back, so let's hear what he has to say.
Well, hey there. Didn't see you stumble back into the odd chamber here. Bet you didn't think that Maximum Oddities would be coming back for Season 2. But we're here, and we're ready to bring you some interesting and crazy things. And of course, we couldn't leave you out there all by yourself in this crazy madness and odd world. Season 2 has been kept in a box, caged up, chained, just waiting to rip out. And now, it's about that time. And all the wonderful and spooky and crazy and mind-altering things will be let loose upon you. And even as we look into the odd, we can't help but think, maybe you have something odd you would like to tell. If there's something that you would like for us to focus on this season, send it to us at MaximumOddities@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at MaximumOdd. We can't wait to unleash these foul things upon you and enjoy the odd that this world has in Season 2.
So, that is the Season 2 trailer for Maximum Oddities. He's back.
He is.
Rick, happy to have you back.
Hi, Rick.
And I'm not gonna give too much away, but we may be doing a crossover episode. Maybe in I don't remember exactly when. But
Soon.
Something's coming.
Soon.
It's coming down the pipeline. It'll be a little while. It'll be worth it, though. It'll be really cool. So make sure that if you're listening to us, go over and check out Maximum Oddities. And if you're not familiar with the show, catch up. They're usually about 20-minute episodes, so they're you can really binge them, which is kind of fun, because sometimes you don't have a lot of time to listen. So
And they're
perfect.
Super cool, interesting. Some of them off the wall stuff that I'd never even heard of.
I always go back to the Kentucky meat shower.
Yes.
Because it's funny.
For sure.
And
it was one of the
vampires.
first ones, and you're like, what?
He did vampires because I asked him to. So, welcome back, Rick. Glad to have you. But it is time to move on. And ironically, This week's topic came from Rick.
It did. Listener suggestion.
And where are we going this week?
We are going to West Virginia.
To?
Moundsville Penitentiary.
Yes, also has been known as West Virginia Penitentiary.
Yes.
Moundsville, if you're like me, I actually knew a lot about this place, but when he requested Moundsville, I think I knew it as West Virginia Penitentiary because I had no idea what he was asking. And once I started to sit down and actually do the research, it dawned on me, like, I've consumed a lot of material surrounding this place.
Yeah.
So it was very cool. I did learn some things, so that's always fun because a lot of the stuff we watch doesn't exactly give you the deep dive history.
Absolutely.
So
and
I got to learn some stuff.
It's been a while since we've done a prison.
It's been a while. Don't get us copyrighted. It has. I know we think we've done 2 in the past.
Yes.
So we're bringing it back for another one. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
I know, me too. I always enjoy doing the prisons and jails and stuff.
Yes, the prisons they're fun. They're fun, and they always have like darker history, so.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're gonna, people die.
Bonus.
Ooh, that's a little rough, but whatever. We'll get past that. So I think, without further ado, we should kind of jump into this one. What do you think?
All right, let's do it. Take it away.
Okay. This week, I'd like to give a shout out to WVExplorer.com, Wikipedia.com, WVPennTours.com, HauntedHouses.com, Veritapastium.1, I don't know how to say that, LegendsOfAmerica.com, and CityTownInfo.com. I went deep for this one.
I see that.
Moundsville, West Virginia, in Marshall County, is located 53 miles southwest of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Part of the surrounding Wheeling metro area, the city is not an isolated city. Moundsville was created in 1835. The city was named after the Mammoth Grave Creek Indian Mound. The area was first settled in 1771, and it was known as the Grave Creek. There was a large burial mound, which was built by the Adena people. From the years of about 1000 BC to about 180, the Adena people were a group of well-organized societies that lived in parts of present-day Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, and of course, West Virginia. The Adena people were not a single tribe, but rather a group of indigenous people that shared similarities in artifact style, architecture, and other cultural practices, including a common burial and ceremonial system that included mound building. The Adena were the first group of mound builders, a practice that spanned several cultures over a period of about 20 centuries. Building these mounds was a monumental task, as these ancient people didn't use the wheel and had no horses. Large amounts of earth would have had to have been moved by basket load to the mountainside. Probably for this reason, the mounds were used more than once, and over the years, more earth was brought in, and the mounds were built higher and higher, containing multiple burials at different levels. Most of the mounds ranged in a size from about 20 to 300 feet in diameter. However, the conical type, as found in West Virginia, are much larger. The largest of the burial mounds, standing at 62 feet high and 240 feet in diameter, are thought to have been built over a period of about 100 years or more. The name was changed to Elizabethtown in 1798. The city was established in 1831, which was known as the Mound City. These two communities merged in 1866, and they became the city of Moundsville. In 1863, West Virginia had only seceded from Virginia and suffered a shortage of public institutions, including prisons. Governor Arthur I. Borman lobbied the legislature for a penitentiary, but was repeatedly denied. It directed him instead to send prisoners out of the state into county jails, which was also inadequate at the time. After 9 inmates escaped in 1865, the press took up the cause, and in 1866, the legislature approved the purchase of 10 acres just outside Moundsville and approximately 12 miles south of Wheeling, then the state capital. The building's Gothic Revival architecture, quote, exhibited great strength and conveyed the mind of a cheerless blank indicative of the misery which awaited an unhappy being who entered within its walls, unquote, according to a quote from Abandoned Online. The first building raised was the fanciful North Wagon Gate, completed in 1876, built with hand-worked sandstone quarries locally. Officials used prison labor, as it did in the North and South cell block areas. The South Hall contained 224 by 7-foot cells. The North Hall included a chapel, a kitchen, hospital, and a dining area. A 4-story tower connected the 2 wings, included administration offices, space for female inmates, and living quarters for the warden and his family. The prison at Joliet provided the prototype for the West Virginia Penitentiary. It was an imposing stone structure, fashioned in the castellated Gothic architectural style. Only the dimensions of West Virginia facility would differ. It would be approximately half the size. No architectural drawings of West Virginia Penitentiary have ever been discovered, so an understanding of the plan developed by the Board of Directors must have been obtained through their 1867 report, which details the procurement of a title for 10 acres of land and a proposal to enclose about 7 acres. On the north side would be a street 60 feet in width, and on the west 140 feet per street in the yard to the front of the buildings. The prison yard would be a parallelogram 682.5 feet in length by 352.5 feet in width, enclosed by a stone wall 5 feet in thickness at the bottom, 2.5 feet at the top, with foundation 5 feet below the surface and wall 25 inches thick. At each of the corners of this wall would be large turrets for use of the guards, with inside staircases. Guard rooms would be above on a level with the top of the main. The superintendent's house and cell buildings would be so placed that the rear wall of each would form part of the west wall. The prison was virtually self-sufficient, and conditions through the early 20th century were considered adequate. Inmates regularly attended classes, and a school and a library were completed in 1900 to help reform and educate inmates. A prison coal mine opened a mile away in 1921, and some inmates were allowed to stay at the mine's camps. However, conditions worsened throughout the years, and the prison was ranked among the most violent by the U.S. Department of Justice. A recreation room known as the Sugar Shack was infamous as a haven for gambling, fighting, and rape. In case you're not familiar with the Sugar Shack, this was a winter recreation room in the basement that, of course, was named the Sugar Shack, and it has been a hotbed of paranormal activity. A lot of violence happened here because the inmates were hardly supervised by the guards, and it became an unofficial playground for the worst of the worst. 36 homicides were confirmed at the prison, including the butchering of R.D. Wall, inmate number 44670, who was shivved by 3 prisoners in 1929 after snitching on fellow inmates. Labor activist Eugene V. Debs served in 1919 on charges of violating the United States Espionage Act of 1917. Eugene was an American socialist, political activist, trade unionist, and one of the founding members of the Industrial Workers of the World, and 5 times the candidate of the Socialist Party of America for President of the United States. Though his presidential candidacies, as well as his work with the labor movements, Eugene eventually became one of the best-known socialists living in the United States. He also ran for president while incarcerated, and while he didn't win, he did have a number of supporters that was astonishing. 1983, convicted multiple murderer
Charles Manson
requested unsuccessfully to be transferred to Moundsville to be near family. For those who don't know, Charles Manson was an American criminal musician who led the Manson family, a cult based in California in the late 1960s. Some of the members committed a series of 9 murders at 4 locations in July and August 1969. In 1971, Manson was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder for the deaths of 7 people, including film actress Sharon Tate. The prosecution contended that, while Manson never directly ordered the murders, his ideology constituted an overt act of conspiracy. In 1929, the state decided to double the size of the penitentiary to cure overcrowding. The cells were too small to hold 3 prisoners at a time. 2 prisoners would sleep on the bunks, while a third slept on a mattress on the floor. Using prison labor, the state completed the expansion in 1959. 15 prisoners escaped in 1979. Ronald Turney Williams, serving time for the 1975 murder of Sergeant David Lilly of Beckley, West Virginia, stole a guard's weapon. On the streets of Moundsville, he met an off-duty state trooper, Philip S. Kessner, who was driving past the prison with his wife.
I took the lead.
Kessner attempted to take action. The escapees pulled him from his car, and Williams fatally shot Kessner, who fired at the fleeing suspects. Williams remained at large for more than a year, sending taunting notes to authorities. During that time, he murdered John Bunchett of Scottsdale, Arizona during a robbery. After a shootout with a federal agent in New York City in 1981, he was apprehended and returned to West Virginia to complete several life sentences. Arizona had also sought his extradition for execution, but as of 2018, he remained in West Virginia's custody. 1986, security at the prison had become loose. It was called a, quote, cons prison. Most of the blocks on the cells had been picked, and inmates roamed freely in the halls. Poor plumbing and insect infestations caused the rapid spread of disease. The prison was holding more than 2,000 men, and crowding was an over issue. At around 5:30 p.m., 20 inmates known as, quote, the Avengers, stormed the mess hall and quickly overpowered 5 officers. The rioters held knives to their throats and handcuffed them. Throughout a 2-day insurrection, 3 inmates were killed by other rioting inmates. According to authors Bert Useem and Peter Kimball, in the book, quote, State of Siege, U.S. Prison Riots, 1971 to 1986, unquote, the rioters lost control of the insurrection and began to fight amongst themselves, and negotiations with prison officials were immediately sought. Quote, the inmates who initiated the riot were not prepared to take charge of it. Danny Lehman, the Avengers president, was quickly agreed upon as best suited for the negotiations with authorities and presenting the demands to the media, unquote. However, Lehman was not one of those men who instigated the riot. Governor Arch A. Moore traveled to the penitentiary to talk with inmates and set up standards on which prison authorities would build. Still, the state Supreme Court ruled that the confinement of the small cells constituted cruel and unusual punishment, and the prison was closed. Most inmates were transferred to the Mount Olive Correctional Complex near Montgomery, West Virginia, and Fayette County. 94 men were executed at the prison from 1899 to 1959. Hanging was the method of execution before 1950. And 85 men met their fate at the gallows. Harry Powers, one of the first serial killers in modern history, was hanged here in 1932. The public could attend hangings, which were public until about 1931, when Frank Heyer was executed for murdering his wife. When the trapdoor opened beneath him, his full weight pulled the noose, and he was decapitated. Attendance at the hangings was afterward by invitation only. The last man executed by hanging, Bud Peterson from Logan County, was buried in the prison cemetery because his family refused to claim his body. Electrocution became the means of execution. In 1951, the electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, was built by inmate Paul Glenn. 9 men were electrocuted before the state prohibited capital punishment entirely in 1965. The original chair is now on display in the facility and is included in the official tour. Now, the chair itself was bolted to a low platform, which covered what had previously been the trapdoor for the gallows used in the state's judicial hangings. Its control apparatus was designed in such a way that 3 push-button switches were to be simultaneously pressed by 3 members of the execution team. Only one of these switches actually completed their circuit, allowing each member of the execution team to reassure himself that perhaps he had not been the one who had actually initiated the death of the condemned. Old Sparky is a nickname of the electric chairs in Arkansas, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Kentucky, Nebraska, New York, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, of course, West Virginia. Now, Old Smoky was the nickname of the electric chair used in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. After the prison closed, the Moundsville Economic Development Council secured a 25-year lease on the complex, part of which is maintained as a facility for training law enforcement and corrections personnel through mock riot drills. To assist teams in planning and executing emergency scenarios, the West Virginia High Technology Consortium Foundation commissioned an interactive 3D model of the penitentiary. It made the software available to the public before conducting a 2009 mock riot. Tours are available for visitors who wish to explore the landmark and its history and investigate alleged paranormal activity here. Some travel guides declare the prison among the most haunted in the entire United States. Reports of supernatural phenomena include sightings of phantom inmates by former guards and legends of a quote-unquote shadow man that wanders the premises. Visitors frequently report cold spots and unexplained noises, including ghostly voices. The prison was located on part of a large Native American burial ground that occupied much of the rise above Grave Creek, which became Moundsville. Many prehistoric earthworks, including burial mounds, were located throughout the town. The largest prehistoric burial mound in eastern North America, the Grave Creek Mound, is the one located opposite to the main entrance to the prison building itself. A haunted attraction called the, quote, Dungeon of Horrors, unquote, is also set up at the former prison during Halloween. Now, there are articles online everywhere about this penitentiary, of hangings, electrocutions, prison murders, rapes, and brutality of all levels. It's no wonder why the prison is considered to be one of the most haunted prisons in the entire country. Torment and inhumane conditions seem to be a way of life here at Moundsville, and while its doors are officially closed to inmates today, it can never change what has happened in the past.
Dang.
So it has a dark history, which I think a lot of people are going to know. It's a prison. It had a room that they basically, it was the dating shack for them. You know, dating being just a fluffy word for what was going on there.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of like a turn a blind eye and settle it to the guards type spot.
I think the guards were, the way they went into it was like, as long as they're not attacking us, they can attack each other.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. You know, most of them are going to die in here anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was just a more of they didn't care as long as they didn't try to get out. And they let them do whatever they want.
Yeah. Now, so many parts of that stood out to me.
Okay.
But I just have to say, the one thing that keeps running through my mind is the 3-button push kill switch.
That's a common thing.
I did not know that.
That's like back in the, you've seen, I'm sure, in like movies and stuff where they would have the firing squad where people would line up and shoot a guy.
Right.
It was so people could tell themselves it wasn't them.
I don't know. I just never heard it put quite like that, I guess. I don't know.
I guess the way it goes is that they don't want anybody to have to carry that with them. So
right.
If you make it seem like it could have been other people, then it kind of relieves you of maybe thinking you did it, or, you know, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense, but if you're going to have the nerve to execute somebody, you should have to know you did it.
Yeah.
You know, that's just my opinion.
And one super impressive thing, how are those people building those things literally by hand?
Buckets.
That is insane.
Hey,
so crazy.
These Native Americans were awesome.
That was so crazy. Like, what?
And this prison is literally right across the street from from the biggest burial mound in the country.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt for a second that this prison isn't built on top of bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And there are bodies that have been buried underneath since it's been built. So there is a good possibility that this place houses the energy for something spooky, which I'm sure that you're going to tell us all about.
I sure am.
And now, time for an ad break.
And now, back to our show. Thanks this week for our story goes out to legendsofamerica.com, wikipedia.com, and wboy.com. The West Virginia Penitentiary, located in Moundsville, West Virginia, not only provides visitors with a wealth of history, but some also say it's called home to several resident ghosts. During its 119-year life as a penitentiary, the facility held some of the most violent killers, rapists, and other criminals, many of whom never left the institution alive. It comes as no surprise that this type of environment would leave behind more than a few wandering spirits. Another reason this old building may be haunted is because it is said that it was built on an ancient Native American burial ground. This would not be hard to believe, as the old prison was built directly across from the Grave Creek Mound. Hauntings have been reported as early as the 1930s. During this time, an inmate was often spied walking along the maintenance area, where prisoners were not allowed. In some cases, the guards set off alarms, but there was no one there, and no inmates were unaccounted for when they investigated. The old recreation room in the basement, called the Sugar Shack by prisoners, was once infamous for illegal gambling, drug deals, rape, fighting, and more. Today, visitors report hearing unseen people arguing, talking, and whispering inside this dark, damp room. Others have heard unexplained noises and felt cold spots within the room. In addition to the recreation room, the whole basement area is said to be haunted by a maintenance man who once worked here. He was said to have often spied on the prisoners and was quick to report any news or infractions to the guards. In retaliation, he was stabbed several times with shivs. he was found dead in one of the prison's bathrooms. After his death, his ghost was said to wander around the basement area, and many people have reported equipment malfunctions believed to be caused by the maintenance man. The North Wagon Gate, the prison's oldest structure, is said to be home to one of the prison's most active ghosts. This area once held the execution gallows, where a man named Orville Adkins was hanged in 1938. Here, visitors say the area exudes an evil feeling, and they feel as if they are constantly being watched. Mysterious sounds and voices have been captured in EVPs, and ghosts of the condemned are sometimes seen as apparitions walking on the grounds in the area. The gate is haunted by Orville Adkins, who was condemned for kidnapping a minister who was later found dead. However, his execution was botched. As the noose was being placed around his neck, a nervous assistant pulled the trapdoor handle all too quickly, and Orville fell 20 feet to the stone walkway. Though he was stunned and hurt, he was still alive. He was then pulled back up to the scaffolding and hanged correctly. His footsteps are said to be heard slowly pacing back and forth. Could he be stuck in the spirit world, still trapped between his intended death and his actual death? The North Hall was where the prisoners' worst offenders were placed. Not for the crimes they committed outside, but for their violent behavior on the inside. Though they were locked down in their cells for 23 hours a day, 2 murders still occurred here. One was a biker named Danny, who was stabbed in the eye by another inmate and died of his fatal wound. The other was William, aka Red Snyder, who was convicted of murdering his parents and dismembering their corpses. Red was disliked by many inmates and involved in several fights. In the end, he was attacked in front of his cell and fatally stabbed 37 times. The hall has been the site of many strange events, including photographic anomalies, equipment malfunctions, and the distinct sounds of cell doors banging when no one is there can constantly be heard. Many have reported feeling very uncomfortable there. Red Snyder's cell is said to be the most particularly haunted cell of the whole block. In solitary confinement area, people have often reported feeling cold spots as if they have been touched on their backs. Other hotspots of activity include death row, the psych ward, the chapel, shower rooms, the dining room, and the boiler room. There is one particular entity that is called the Shadow Man because he lurks in dark places and has no visible features. He has been described as appearing like a dark shadow that is incredibly intimidating. Throughout the entire prison, visitors and staff report seeing fleeting glimpses of apparitions, smelling unpleasant odors, strange noises and echoes, feelings of being watched, and disembodied voices that say, "Help, I'm trapped."
Help, I'm trapped.
Visitors have felt brushed, tapped, and even shoved by invisible hands, and cameras have captured ghostly mists, faces, figures, and orbs. Some have even seen the ghosts of prisoners in uniform walking the halls and disappearing into walls. The West Virginia Penitentiary is considered one of the most haunted prisons in all of the United States today. It is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Visitors to the prison can experience 90-minute day tours, 3-hour investigations, overnight investigations, and various events from April through December. I found an article while reading on the internet that states paranormal activity captured during interview at the Moundsville Penitentiary. It's a tale of murder and mystery as thousands of people flock to Moundsville to stare their fear dead in the eyes. Nestled behind ancient burial grounds and where near 1,000 deaths occurred, 7 News wanted to see if the stories of the prison were true. What they took back is footage that they could not explain. More than 12,000 locals head to the penitentiary each year to be scared for fun during Halloween. But the true horror takes place when the costumes are in storage. Tom Stiles, executive director of the Mounds for Economic Development Council, said, quote, "Well, I've been here for 20 years, and the place is haunted. I can tell you that." End quote. In operation for 129 years, the last riot occurred on New Year's Day of 1986. It lasted 52 hours. 3 inmates were brutally murdered, and 16 guards were taken hostage. The worst kinds of people sat inside the building to wait out their days. A total of 998 deaths occurred in the Moundsville Penitentiary. Those same souls, some say, still linger. Among the wretched lives murdered, a leader of the Aryan Brotherhood, William Red Snyder, Red for short, was violently stabbed 37 times in his cell. It's in his cell where people said they hear his voice the most. But Red is not alone. May of 2004, a woman was staying the night in the penitentiary. She heard a noise, saw a figure, and then captured something. It now hangs in the museum. Jason McKinney, a Moundsville Penitentiary tour guide, said, quote, "There was a solid black shadow standing in front of this door, and it was looking right at her. It seemed to be transparent, and it actually looked down at the light, at its chest, and then looked back at her. If that's not strange enough, she continues walking back down the hall, raises her Sony camera. She took one photograph, and thankfully, she captured the shadow we call the Shadow Man." End quote. Jason McKinney is a spirit enthusiast, some might say. One eerie night in 2012, McKinney was walking the dark halls in the north wing when something blocked the light from his flashlight. He said, quote, "A human-like figure, best I can describe, walked out sideways from cell 17 and kind of stared down at me for about 5 seconds. I froze in fear because I thought, I don't want to continue walking towards it. I don't want to turn my back on it. So, a few moments later, I decided I'm going to walk out backwards. I did that. I got out of sight around the corner, and whatever that thing was, it was still standing there, staring at me." End quote. Directly after that, he says, a loud bang was heard on the camera. If you watch the interview, you can hear it for yourself. They say it was louder in person, but sounded like metal slamming together. Jason, Dan, the cameraman, and the interviewer stood alone on the 4th floor of the psych ward. They obviously didn't make that sound, but if not them, then who? Women say their hair gets pulled. Others said, "I've been touched on the shoulder." They walk away in broad daylight, having heard an unexplainable noise. McKinney said, quote, "The people that don't believe me, I say, come spend the night here." End quote. And that's just one account of paranormal activity in the penitentiary. On July 27th, 2019, Iron City Paranormal stood as the doors opened. along with Oakmont Paranormal, who they met up with to help tackle the large prison. They rushed inside, eager to begin their investigation. After all of the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, they ventured out, utilizing some of the employees' tips about current hotspots. The investigation began roughly around 10:30 p.m., and they were given until 4 a.m. to explore the grounds. They were able to utilize most of the equipment, including K2 meters, SB7 spirit box, handheld cameras, stationary cameras, REM pods, recorders, laser grid pen, and an Ovilus. There were a few locations which were extremely active, none of which were at the highly famed areas like the Sugar Shack or Red Snyder Cell. Instead, they felt that the infirmary on the 3rd floor, the chapel, and the cell block north 3rd floor all had significant paranormal activity. They had ample communication at each location, each very distinct and intelligent. The infirmary had more movement and noises rather than any communication. However, there were 2 different locations in that area, and each varied with activity. The side with the surgery and emergency rooms started out with a bang. Literally. They heard footsteps and banging noises almost immediately. There was something that seemingly charged a team member, Dan, at one point, almost as if it were protecting itself or the location. On the opposite side of the infirmary, where visitors met with patients, there was plenty of activity via the spirit box. Inside the chapel, they had their names repeated back to them, as well as a single cold spot moving behind Dan's back, right after the IR light lost all of its power. They did have some communication as well, but the most convincing evidence was the cold spot where something seemed to be drawn to Dan. While inside the north cell block, they claimed to have experienced some communication with the spirit that wasn't too happy with their death, or what they were forced to do in their past life. A medium who joined the team believed that someone was pushed or jumped from that location. After their evidence and data collection, they approached the staff and asked if there was ever anyone who had died in that cell block. They confirmed that there was a suicide and another inmate was pushed over the railing. Hospitals in general can be very energized and active locations. Add to it that it's located in a prison, and that just increases the odds there's something left over from a past life. There haven't been any particular names or specific sightings revolving around the infirmary, but it is said that the entities in these areas have been known to be protective of their surroundings and even touch guests, whether they are there for investigations or just touring the structure. Right after they arrived, before they set out to explore, the staff had mentioned that the infirmary area had been very active the past few evenings. Whether it is someone in the building giving it energy or possibly around an anniversary of someone's death is still unknown. Needless to say, they packed up their gear and headed straight for this location right off the bat. The investigation at this spot started off with a bang before they even had the recorder going and the tripod set up. They all got an overwhelming feeling and began to hear footsteps all around them. One member was the only one running with his handheld camera, and before they could get acclimated, he was rushed by something. They didn't capture too much in the photos, but you can clearly hear footsteps, almost like they're dragging their feet. On top of that, they captured what at first appeared to be the sound of a bark, but it was drawn out into more of a growl. They captured those noises on both the recorder and the videos. There have been few occasions where the chapel is openly available to the public. Lucky for them, the penitentiary had just recently began to open it on a regular basis. There aren't any paranormal or historical stories that occur in this spot, but it is a chapel, and many inmates had gone through spiritual changes and used this chapel regularly when they were housed here. It is said that those on death row were allowed in the chapel once a month under strict supervision. They were also allowed to spend the day here before their scheduled hanging or electrocution. It's highly possible that there was some energy left here with all the fear of death and even spiritual enlightenment from the prisoners. They first stopped in and went upstairs, but there didn't seem to be anything up there. No energy or ambiance or anything. It was more like a control room full of old equipment. Their next stop was down in the pews and the altar area. They felt like they definitely received quite a bit of communication in this spot. Not to mention at one point, something absorbed the energy suddenly from the IR light and used it to manifest itself enough to touch one of the team members on the back. Throughout the rest of their night, headed to locations such as Red Snyder's cell, cell block New Wall, and the North Wagon Gate, they didn't get much activity outside of a few EVPs, some personal feelings, and a few experiences that weren't very impressive. Next, they headed to the cafeteria. This was a location where the inmates could converse and really have a little bit of limited freedom. As can be expected, the prisoners intended to enjoy their time in this area. It was also taken away from them as a form of punishment when a prisoner would cross the line. This location is also the spot of one of the infamous riots inside the jail. During this riot, snitches and child molesters were tortured, essentially forced to watch one another get cut into pieces before succumbing to their own form of death. The rioters were able to get upgraded meals and new living quarters, as well as some more social time. The riot ended without many innocents being injured. Some guards were hurt but not killed. It was here that they ended their evening, as it was their last investigation. Even though they could have spent much more time exploring and investigating, they did not receive much communication here either. But they did hear some odd whistling while no one was around in the area. And they did spot some shadows lurking around the kitchen area where the inmates would have picked up their meal trays. It's difficult to see it in any of their videos, but they all saw the same shadows that were moving side to side. Their guess is that it was some kind of residual energy reliving their social time there, or perhaps replaying the riot that occurred. This penitentiary has also had visitors like Ghost Adventures who traveled there for an episode. So it's safe to say that the Moundsville Penitentiary's reputation is known far and wide. With most guests of the prison having some form of personal experiences, it's no wonder so many paranormal enthusiasts flock to West Virginia to see it for themselves. With around 1,000 deaths, riots, rapes, and many, many more things that we will never know that have happened here, I think it's safe to say that if you're looking for paranormal activity and you walk through the doors, you won't have to look long, because it will find you.
Ooh. It's coming for you.
I feel like that was like a lot.
It was a lot
of different kinds of stories, like jam-packed.
Yes.
All into one.
But like other places that we've covered before, it's noticeable that a lot of people go there but a lot of people have the same occurrences.
Yes.
You know, and I've said this before, when that happens, to me, it lends to the legitimacy of claims. If a bunch of people who've never met each other or talked to each other go into an area and they all have the same thing happen.
Right.
You know, because, hey, it's happening over and over again. It doesn't matter if it's residual or intelligent. The fact that it's happening over and over again says that something is happening.
Absolutely.
So I got to say, though, during part of your story, in the beginning of the second story you read, it reminded me of when we went to the lighthouse and they got the cold spot.
Yes.
So that was pretty fun.
I know.
And then there's just a lot of stuff. And I'm very surprised that the second team that went in there didn't catch anything from like Red Cider Cell and the Sugar Shack, because those are, when you watch videos and stuff, those are the highlights right there. Those are the places where people are for sure going to get some kind of activity.
Yeah, those tend to be like the super hot spots that, you know, everybody seems to get stuff. But I mean, different people give off different kind of energies.
Yes.
And, you know, that has to affect the energy of the spirits,
I'm sure.
You know? So I don't know, maybe they were just giving off some bad vibes or something.
Or maybe they weren't giving off bad vibes. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Maybe they were giving off good vibes and the spirits were like, not tonight.
Yeah, maybe.
And let them pass. Or I'm pretty sure that Red Snyder Cell is actually the cell that we've seen in YouTube videos where they leave cigarettes for him.
Yes, I believe so.
So I'm curious, because they didn't say in that story, did they bring him a cigarette?
Right? Like,
because
you?
That would be a way to get him to talk up. But, you know, it's pretty cool. There's a lot that happens here. And this is the tip of a very massive iceberg. So if you really want to find out more about this place, just look it up. there is no shortage of articles on this place.
And
tons.
Yeah, and this place is covered by paranormal groups.
If you don't want to read, go on YouTube. Go on YouTube. I think everybody's been there.
It's crazy. It's such a big done place.
Yeah, I remember the Ghost Adventures episode, and I know, I'm just off the top of my head, at least 5 YouTube channels that have been there.
Oh, yeah.
So this place is definitely covered. It was still fun to do. Like I said, when we said before we were going to focus more on, you know, maybe less known places, it's always fun to go back and do a bigger one, because I'll be honest, it's easier to do the research.
It is,
you know,
and there's so much more, but you never know. Like, maybe somebody's never heard of this place, and,
maybe,
you know, it'll kind of lead them to find some more interesting things to watch and see and learn, you know?
Well, I hope we learned y'all something today.
Oh, we learned, did you?
Hope you learned it something today. But anyways, you know, we're going to have to get to a point. You know, we're going to move it along. So with knowing everything that we just learned and the stuff that we've read, the stuff that we've watched, do you think that possibly
Is it real?
Let little Steve know?
I absolutely believe that there is spirit energy here. I think a lot of things did happen in the prison, but I think the majority of it is fueled from the land, from what was there before. How could it not be, with a burial ground directly across from it, like under it, around it? Like, you never know. And for it to be documented like that, to have so much condensed in one area, I think a lot of it was there already. And with all the tragedy and killings and bad stuff that's happened inside the prison, I think it's added to it. Yes, that too.
Awful.
I think it's added to it. But yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Hundo?
What about you?
Well, as you know how I feel about the Native American culture,
I
being a small part, I believe that, I believe it's haunted for the sheer fact that they are building and living on Native American burial grounds. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. And with the addition of the intense fear of men being raped by men, being stabbed and tortured and tormented every day, being waiting in a cell to die, botched hangings, electrocutions. I mean, all this stuff has to add up at some point. So I do 100% believe that it is haunted. And yeah, I just don't see any other way. It has to be. And the reoccurring activity that happens here would have honestly alone been enough for me to say something's happening here. But you add that in with everything else, and it is just a paranormal cocktail. So yes, this week we are giving Moundsville Penitentiary, West Virginia Penitentiary, whatever you want to call it,
The big old seal of approval.
Now, with all that being said, I wanted to wait till the end. I actually was able to find some audio clips on this place.
Yes, it's been a while.
It's been a while. So, we're going to play a couple of them. And I kind of listened to some of these. I kind of didn't. But we're going to kind of hear them for the first time together. I don't really know what they are. Okay, so we're going to go into this blind. So, we're all going to hear these for the first time.
Okay.
Together.
Listeners, headphones required, better listening experience.
This is from the West Virginia Penitentiary. Now, I'm not really sure what that was. This is one I actually did listen to. This was from February 16, 2019. This is from the West Virginia Penitentiary Facebook page. And it says, Eric and Andrea Dreer stopped by our booth at the Home and Garden Show in Cleveland and shared this awesome audio clip that they captured while doing a paranormal investigation in 2017. Listen, I'll be honest, I don't know what I heard there. If that loud, piercing voice was the actual EVP, dude, that's impressive.
It sounded more like
an ovulus.
like an ovulus answer. I don't know what it said. I couldn't tell.
I couldn't either.
But
let's listen to it one more time.
Okay.
Turn it up. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
To me, it sounds like Sigmund or something like that.
Saveman.
Or like in like a robotic voice, and then like a different voice going, "Hello."
Yeah, I'm not sure what I heard.
I don't know. That's just what I took from it.
Well, whatever. You know, everybody out there, form your own opinion.
Yeah.
The next one I'm gonna play is from. I got a few I'm trying to pick from here. Okay. We'll do this one from whoever, Mitch 103178. It's an EVB recording at Moundsville State Penitentiary. So there was that one. Now, I definitely heard something there.
Yeah.
And basically, it was the same thing. It was looped. Mm-hmm. Once it got to a certain point, and they believe what it was saying is far, far away.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is what I hear. I'm not even going to play that one again just because it was so good. You could hear it.
You could definitely hear the voice, but it also sounded like they had the EVP in their pocket.
Yes.
Unless the spirit was pushing it and moving the recorder around itself.
Now, I'm going to play two more. These ones are a little longer.
Okay.
This one is it's close to 3 minutes, but I really want to play this one. This is from Claire Mark Cordes, I don't know, Cordes. This is from 2014, and this is an EVP K2 session at Red Snyder's cell. So let's check this one out.
Okay, recording. I turn this meter on, and it was spiking, lots and lots of reds. I just want to see if it'll do it again. Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
The K2.
There's someone in here with me?
K2 is going off.
Okay.
Like crazy?
What's your name?
It's answering him.
Oh, wow.
Tell me what your name is. I can certainly see you on my meter. It's a car going by. What happened to you at this place? Can you tell me? What happened to you here? Were you killed? Who killed you? I'm sorry to hear that. I'd like to do a spirit box session, so maybe I'll be able to hear your voice. Do you mind if I turn on a piece of loud equipment so I can hear you talking to me? Because I want to hear your story. Were you part of the Aryan Brotherhood? Aryan Nation? I feel like you're talking to me.
Okay, now, something to note during that is that every single time he asked a question, the K2 meter went off.
Wow.
And especially when he asked, what is your name? Now, I know he's using a K2 meter, but it instantly kept flashing on red, which he was at, Red Snyder Cell.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were able to hear it, but if you, when we put this out, you go back and listen, I can hear a voice underneath all that. I can hear what sounds like a voice talking off in the distance.
To me, I could hear crickets. I heard a car driving by.
I can hear at a certain point towards the end, it sounds like a distant voice.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like muffly talking.
Huh.
And the last one we're going to play is by Amy Renee 2, all one word. And this is from even farther back in 2010. And the title of this is Exclusive, Scary as Hell, EVP of a Prison Guard.
Ooh.
So I have high hopes for this one. Here we go. Okay, so that was looped a few times and cleaned up as it went. And the cool thing about this one is, I'm going to read the description of this first, and then I'll tell you what's cool about it. Since this is an amazing EVP I captured at Moundsville Penitentiary in West Virginia, one of the country's most haunted prisons. I left there scared to death. At some points, I don't think I was able to go on. And I have been an investigator for about 13 years. met with loud bangs, phantom footsteps, and whispers. The inmates were showing that even though they were dead, they can still scare you. So I hope you enjoy it, this unbelievable EVP, and so on. Now, the thing about this EVP is that, what do you hear it saying?
I don't know. I couldn't make it out.
I can hear it saying what the video says it's saying, and I heard it before it said what it was saying, and it's opening the doors. Opening the doors. And she asked the prison director about this noise, and the guy kind of was like, wow, because apparently the prison guards would make all the inmates stand back, and they would yell out, opening the doors before they would open the doors.
No way.
So,
I just got goosebumps.
So very cool. I mean, that's very, very cool.
Wow.
So Moundsville, we gave it the approval. You should check it out. It's a very, very cool place. So I think that's going to do it for this week.
I think so too.
Yeah, let's end this one, and we got to go get ready for the next one. It's going to be a really good one. But where can they find us?
They can find us on Instagram at forthebooze_podcast and on Facebook at forthebooze.
You can also find us and talk to us on Twitter at forthebooze and on YouTube at forthebooze if you'd like to watch instead of listen. It's still just audio. It's still just an audio format, but you can watch on your TV if you want. It's pretty cool. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and 5-star us if you can. It really helps us get ahead, and we appreciate it. And yeah, this was a cool one. Thank you, Rick, for the suggestion. And don't forget to go check out Rick's podcast over there at Maximum Oddities. It's
Absolutely.
Good.
And if anybody has any stories that they want to send in, we will read on the show. You can be anonymous or not. You can always send them on any form of social media or at our email at forthebooze12@gmail.com.
Absolutely. We need them.
And even listener suggestions like Rick's today. If you have a place that you'd like us to cover and do, send it over, let us know, and we will absolutely look into it.
Email it or hit us up on the social medias,
All the meds on the interwebs.
All the meds. We have a link tree, too. It's For the Booze on the link tree. So
yes.
I can't remember the exact number sequence, but, you go to Linktree and look up For the Booze. It's there. So.
Well, thank you, everybody, so much for listening this week. And every week, we appreciate you so very much.
Absolutely.
And we will see you in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.